Those are sounds from the hostage square in Tel Aviv on Thursday, with people singing and dancing and wearing Israeli flags as capes, reacting with joy to the deal brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump and the Arab states, a deal that should see a ceasefire in place by this Friday, then all the remaining 48 Israeli hostages or their remains returned, likely beginning Monday or Tuesday. Canadian Jacqui Vital has been monitoring these long-awaited developments from her home in Jerusalem. She says she's glad for the families who've waited so long to be reunited with their kidnapped loved ones, those still alive after more than 730 days, and for the others to give them a proper burial. Vital has some experience with what these families have been going through. On October 7th, 2023, her two young grandsons were also kidnapped into Gaza, taken from the safe room of their home in kibbutz Holit after Hamas first killed their mother, Adi. Adi was 33 years old. She'd fought off the attackers and shot and killed one of them, but nobody knew what had happened to her for a few days until searchers located her body under a bed, booby-trapped. The two boys were freed within hours and reunited with their dad, who had survived, although 4-year-old Negev was shot in the foot and needed surgery. Adi and the boys all had Canadian passports and were regular visitors to Canada, which is why Jacqui Vital and the families of the 8 Canadian victims published a letter this week on October 7th to the Prime Minister reminding him that amidst all the attention being paid to the latest hostage deal, the Canadian government has a duty to remember its own victims and hold those who killed them accountable.
I'm talking about the 8 Canadians. First of all, they need to know about us. Never mind, there's 1,200 of them. But they're 8 Canadian citizens. Negev and Esau are Canadian citizens. And they don't know. They really don't know. So that's my mission.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Friday, October 10th, 2025. Welcome to North Star, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, and made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. The letter from the families of the 8 Canadians asks for a meeting with Prime Minister Carney, who the group's lawyer Brandon Silver says hasn't even sent condolences to any of them and hasn't met with any of them either since he took office in March, 8 months ago, after Justin Trudeau stepped down. Trudeau held several warm meetings with the hostage families while he was Prime Minister, but that didn't prevent the families from suing the Canadian government last year with the help of CIJA after Ottawa resumed its funding for the UN Relief Agency for Palestine, UNRWA, even though Israel said some employees took part in the October 7th attack. That case is still ongoing in federal court. The families now have other things to ask of Carney. They want him to bring in sanctions against Hamas's leaders and freeze the assets, and also to go after the networks which help that terrorist group raise funds here in Canada. And the RCMP, they say, should prosecute any guilty Iranian officials living here using war crimes laws, since Iran armed and trained Hamas. To find out more about the letter to the PM and the mood in Israel and the solemn anniversary of her daughter's death, we're joined by Jacqui Vital from Jerusalem. Welcome to the CJN.
Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to speak to you. We're speaking as the news is changing so rapidly. Hopefully, God willing, that'll all go well. When you are listening to all these developments, how is it sitting with you and your family?
To tell you the truth, I didn't listen to anything. I turned on the TV this morning. I heard the news. I saw the headlines that there's a deal. And I saw a few of the hostage parents being interviewed, and they're all like just beaming and crying. And then I was out of the house all day. So I didn't hear anything else. I'm glad for them. It's not going to change my life. It's not. But I'm glad. I'm glad for them because I know. I only had 3 days of thinking that Adi was kidnapped. And I couldn't touch my neck because it was so tense. So I don't know how they lived 732 days like that. I don't know. Like, what are they? Never mind their kids. How are they? I read a post last night. Someone else from kibbutz Holit who was murdered like Adi. Chaim Kutzman, and his mother wrote this morning. She said, "Oh, I woke up to this great news, but can't really be happy because I'm preparing for a yahrzeit. We're both having our memorial ceremonies next Friday. Adi and Chaim were 2 doors away from each other, so."
You were at kibbutz memorial, not at Holit, but a memorial for Holit just within the last day. What was that? And maybe tell us a bit about that.
Well, the people from Cholit, you still can't live on Cholit. Until recently, it was still a military zone, so they couldn't even do anything in terms of rebuilding or whatever. They're working very hard, and their goal is to move back by July 26th. All the houses that were burned were torn down, of course, and new ones have to be built. Some of the houses will be renovated. I know that half of Adi's house has been torn down. 'Cause half of it was untouched, believe it or not, because the terrorists came in from the back, from the porch, and went straight for the safe room. So the front door and the front of the house was untouched completely. So all the stuff that was a mess is gone. And her husband will get a new home. No one expects him to go and live in that house again. I mean, he wouldn't anyways, but so at this ceremony last night, we were at the ceremony last year also. And last year, a family member spoke about each of the fallen. And this year, it was a friend who spoke about each of the different members of the kibbutz who were murdered. There were 15 of them, including 2 Thai workers, and 2 of their Bedouin workers were killed in captivity. So one of Adi's high school friends, one of her very best friends, wrote, wasn't a monologue, but sort of like, and she just told stories about how much she misses Adi and some of the silly things that they used to do together. I was crying and laughing at the same time because she just touched so many parts of Adi's life. And then the thing had Tikva. Oh, someone actually, we didn't even know he was doing this. Adi wrote a poem in July 23 that's also on her headstone. And we know of 3 different musicians who have composed music to this poem. And last night, someone from the kibbutz played his version. So,
And were you and Yaron the only members of the family, or did other people come too?
no, just the 2 of us. My kids have a hard time dealing with all of this. If you could read my son's Facebook, he's heartbroken. He was after a D in line, and he was very close to her, and she was his mentor. Yeah, it hurts him so much.
And did the grandchildren and your son-in-law go?
No, no, the kids are too little anyways. Negav is 5.5 and Eshel's 2.5. So,
Right. How is Negev's foot? I know he was shot on that day.
oh yeah, he's fine. He had surgery the day after, and he's fine. He's totally fine.
Look, the reason we got in touch with you was because of a letter that was published on October 7th by you and some of the other Canadian families, bereaved hostage and victim families, to Prime Minister Carney. So by you and your pro bono lawyer, Brandon Silver, from the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. I wondered, we can talk about it because you guys put it together before the peace deal or the ceasefire and all such thing was fine. So it's kind of came out before. So with that in mind, first of all, whose idea was this letter?
In August, someone interviewed me, and we put out a video. And part of it, besides telling me a D story, was I can't call you Prime Minister Carney because there's no phone number in the Nepean district where my sister lives and where I'm staying. So maybe you could call me. And I had Anthony Housefather. I wrote to Melanie Jolie. I wrote to Anita Anand. I said, I want to speak to the Prime Minister. I got nowhere, of course. Yes, we told them, but tachlis, nothing happened. I did speak to Anita Anand, and before we spoke to her, I sent her the video that we have that's called Who Heard of Holit, and the part about Adi's story and the famous pictures that the terrorists filmed. The terrorist with the 2 boys in his arms, that's a famous picture all over the world. people say to me, "Oh, we always wondered what happened to those little boys." So, yeah, those are my grandsons. So I sent that to her, and, they're bandaging Negev's shot foot on the porch, and then telling him to say Bismillah, the blessing in Arabic, and then telling him to drink. I mean, this is like minutes after they've murdered his mother, probably in front of his eyes. So I sent this to her to see, because she had no idea. And I'm sure Carney has no idea. And that's why, I said to him in that video, I said, change your mind. This is before he said, okay, to the Palestinians.
To the state, just so our listeners can keep up with our we know where you're going, but just follow us. You were in Canada for about 2 months, right? Crossing the country and speaking to Jewish day camps and, Jewish summer camps and Jewish groups, Ben Gurion groups all across the country for 2 months this past summer.
Yes.
And so you were doing these parlor meetings, I guess you would call them. And so this video that you were talking about, which we can link to, is with Lisa MacLeod, the politician in Nepean, who
She was.
Yeah, it was. But now she's a very big ally of the Jewish community. Why you want Prime Minister Carney to have a meeting with you. Let's break down what's in the letter. It talks about, I don't know if you have a copy, but especially time for leadership, especially after what happened in Manchester. And I'm wondering, why do you want a meeting with the Prime Minister? And why are you so frustrated with the length of time it's taken since he became leader in March?
To tell the truth, I don't know if it's going to make any difference. But for me, and that's why I do, not we, because I usually do it with my husband, is to keep the story alive. I'm going back to square one, that they don't know. They just don't know. And how are we going to tell? It's not like Shoah, the Holocaust, that nobody spoke for 30 or 40 years, and then all of a sudden, oh, there are 1,200. I say, and everybody goes, oh, no. 1,200 equals 6 million. It's a number, but they're not numbers, they're people. And I don't know who all the 1,200 are, but I sure know who one of them is. And I want people to remember who she was, that she's just not a number. She had so much to live for, and the research that she did, she was onto something. And it's just, boom, it's gone. And Negev National, boom, gone. Their mother's gone. Our daughter's gone. My kid's sister, she's gone. So we have to keep her alive.
Why would you want Prime Minister Carney to meet with you, and compared to what you were able to achieve with the previous Liberal Prime Minister, who you did?
I don't know what we achieved with them either, but when I met Trudeau a year and a half ago, and I said to him, I was in Canada on October 7th. And I said, I know for a fact on October 8th, you already knew about 3 of them. There were only 3 at that point. Vivian Silver, Adi, and one of the boys. I don't remember which one. I said, and you didn't call me the next day when we reported that they found her body. So, okay, we know she's not kidnapped and she's been murdered. And nobody from the government called us. Like, do they care about their Canadian citizens? All they care about is the Palestinians. We give money to UNRWA. Like, why are they doing this? Why are they on their side and not helping us? That's what I want to know. Why aren't they helping us? Why aren't they doing anything about what's happening in Canada? People I know, they're afraid. The woman that was stabbed in Ottawa was a relative of mine. Just the anti-Semitism that's just blown totally. It's out of the bag. Like they don't even know how to stop it. I don't know if anybody does.
Ever since October 7th, 2023, Muslim and Jewish communities in Canada have been torn apart, I've known you for 20 years. You've been at my house for Shabbat supper, I don't know how many times. And for 1 second, you can't put down your friend and just hold my hand?
We're fed a constant stream of Jews and Muslims talking at each other, about each other, but rarely do we hear them talking to each other.
There was, why are you doing this? What's the benefit of doing this?
This podcast aims to do something different. I'm Avi Feingold, a rabbi and a writer with the Canadian Jewish News.
I'm Yafa Sakeja, a Canadian-Palestinian entrepreneur and volunteer with the Canadian Friends of Standing Together.
We're sitting down with Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Palestinians, from coast to coast and across the political divide, having difficult conversations in good faith.
We are not the Israeli government. Palestinians are not Hamas.
This is the place where we're both supposed to end up, Israeli and Palestinian, Arab and Jewish.
Subscribe to In Good Faith, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, you mentioned Hamas giving money and UNRWA, so let's bring up that lawsuit, which the the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, and Lawrence Greenspan, the lawyer in Ottawa representing your group. Where is that lawsuit that you all filed a year ago, April 2024, to have an injunction to review the government's, just for our listeners who may not remember, Ottawa paused the money for UNRWA when it was discovered that some of the employees of UNRWA were suspected to have taken part in the murders of Israelis during October 7th.
Yeah.
And then like 5 minutes later, they lifted the pause and started to continue the money
That's
again.
exactly when we met Trudeau. It was just after they started giving the money back.
So you and CIJA went and asked for an administrative review at the federal court. You know, you mentioned that there's a lot of anti-Semitism. You heard stories about it as well when you were crossing the country.
I see it. I saw it a few times, like when we were outside McGill driving by and we saw protesters. When I was in Ottawa, they stopped the gay parade. And I'm on all those Facebook groups, the Jewish Ottawa, Jewish Toronto. So I see every day people are posting things that are happening.
Right. That's kind of an important topic in the letter that you released on October 7th. So you haven't been successful in getting in touch with the Prime Minister, but you did meet with Anita Anand by phone, right? The Minister of Foreign Affairs. So at least you got her. What did she say?
Like I said, she didn't know anything. Also on the phone with me was my nephew, who he did a lot of the talking, and he spoke a lot about the anti-Semitism problem in Canada.
Mhm.
What she did say is she was leaving that night to go abroad, and when she came back, we were just going to miss each other. She was coming back to Toronto, and I was just leaving Toronto. So she said to me, "When you come back the next time, tell me, and hopefully we can have a meeting." So I'm coming back in 2 weeks. And I've written her and said, "I want to see you, and maybe you can take me to see the Prime Minister." I mean, I've been pushing this for the last 2 weeks, and let's see if they can do it or not.
And what will you tell him?
I don't know, but I still want him to know the story. I still want him to know the story. I still want him to know that there's 8 Canadians. In May, there was the Nova exhibit in Toronto, and I got a flyer saying that one day, one of the mothers of one of the Nova survivors, the Canadian Nova survivors, was going to be speaking about the 4 Canadians who were murdered at the Nova. I saw that and I hit the bridge. And I found out who was behind all of this. And I said, no way that's going to happen. I said, this isn't in Timbuktu. This is in Toronto. You are going to say the names of all 8 Canadians. You want to talk about Nova after? Go ahead. But when I speak, I always say that there were 8 Canadians.
Yeah. Yeah. And Omar Nutra's family lives in Calgary.
That's what I'm saying. It's not going to change anything. It's going to make me feel better. That they know. Maybe they'll tell somebody else. I don't know. But they have to know. These are their. He's supposed to be my Prime Minister, right?
I get the feeling that you're sort of mentally preparing yourself for the actual memorial dates in Israel are coming. Can you tell us a bit about what is planned and what you are going to participate in?
I have no idea what the government is planning. None. No. No one has ever reached out to us from the government. Nobody. They had a memorial 2 nights ago in Park Yarkon that the families put together, a memorial ceremony on October the 7th. But I wasn't part of that either. I don't even know how I didn't even know how to be part of that.
It's a different grief, and I understand that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we're speaking about Adi, and my husband speaks about what happened that day on the kibbutz because he's a survivor. He was there on Holy that day. So when we do these presentations, we tell the story, and we tell the story of the miracles that happened to him, that he's still around. So we're going to be speaking at Adi's high school in the morning, in the evening. One of her friends wrote a one-man play about Adi, and she's going to perform it, and then we're going to do a presentation at some community center. A few nights later, we're doing it at another community center. Also on the 15th at night, we're doing it at a community center. So, and on the 25th, we're going to Adi's Pre-Army Academy to speak to the new generation of kids at this academy. There were three people from that particular mechina that were murdered. Adi, Anair, the one that threw the grenades back into the shelter, the grenade, and a third young man who was a paramedic who saved a lot of people. So they try and do something in memory of the three of them. They asked if the parents could come, so we're going to be there. So we'll show again some of the footage that we have of the day.
Mentioning the army, the ceasefire is supposed to start.
Right.
Do you have family or grandchildren, older grandchildren that are in service now or were?
I have a son-in-law who was in 4 times. He was the son-in-law who lived on Kisufim. They were 14 hours in their safe room with 3 small children and shooting all around them, but the terrorists did not go into their house. They were evacuated by the IDF straight to buses that took them to the Dead Sea. And over the last 2 years, he's been in the army 4 times. The first time they took him, I said, how could they take him? His wife just lost her sister. And he doesn't even have to go, or so he claims. He turned 40.
So is he there now or he's home?
Now he's home, and he knows that he's supposed to go in November. So maybe now he won't have to go. But he does have another call-up. He does know that he has another call-up. So, and his kids are hysterical, right? They just hear the word Miluim, the military reserve, and they just go, you can't go, you can't go. They start crying, and then you're going again. Yeah. I don't know how my daughter does it, because they're 8 and 6-year-old twins that just started grade 1. So you can imagine the last 2 years of their life living in a hotel for 10 months and then temporary housing in Omer, not even their house, right? But whatever. Better than living in a hotel.
Yeah.
Now they're 2 weeks back into Kisufim, and they only moved to Kisufim at the end of July 23. And one of the reasons was to be closer to Adi.
Well, I hope that you do get a meeting or a phone call, and you'll let us know how it goes.
Okay, you got a deal.
May her memory be for a blessing, and
Amen.
amen.
Bye.
Thank you so much. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of North Star, made possible thanks to the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Jacqui Vital will be back in Canada at the end of this month, including to attend a fundraising dinner in Ottawa being put on by the Friends of the Jewish National Fund charity. Proceeds will help rebuild her daughter's kibbutz Holit, even though Vital says it's unlikely the 2 boys and their father, Anani, will ever return to live there. The family is living in a moshav nearby, but Anani commutes back to the kibbutz as manager of the fruit crops. He's also launched a pineapple growing business in his late wife's name with little stickers on the fruit. A code takes customers to a website with her story. We asked the PMO for a statement but didn't receive a response by deadline. Our show is produced by Andrea Varsany and Zachary Judah Kaufman. Michael Freeman's our executive producer, and the themes by Brett Higgins. Stay with us for continuing coverage of the pending ceasefire and hostage release and Canadian reaction. And thanks for listening.